And I have found this to be such a great psychological hack because I don't know about you, but I have a little bit of a rebel tendency where just because I've said I'm going to do something doesn't mean I want to do it. Again, I've said most of my life, it feels like I'm just wrestling with the little demon up here in my head. Let me know if you can relate. I mean, personally, I think that the whole reason we're here is just to learn. And so that little inner voice is the thing challenging you to become better. But it can be frustrating, to say the least. And on today's part 2 of Harness the Power of Planning podcast, number 89, I talk about the fresh start effect and some little psychological tips and tricks I use to help maximize its value on part 2 of episode 89, starting now. Good morning. It is Thursday, and I am Alegre of Beyond Your Wildest Dreams, and I am on a mission to help you prioritize yourself and your goals by harnessing the power of planning, which is why when I put this live video cast up as a podcast, it is called the Harness the Power of Planning podcast. And you can find that wherever you listen to your podcast. And this will actually be episode 89. I can't believe how close I am to 100. It has been years in the making. It is definitely a marathon, not a sprint. And I'm often accompanied by my good friend Natasha, who I co-wrote 4 workbooks with. These are our, as we call them, bouquet of books. And these books are all designed to help you prioritize yourself and your goals because you are important. And this was something that took me a long time to learn. And I will get into it when I get into our topics today. But first, as I've mentioned, I've been doing the last month or so, I'm going to pull a little quote from this box of quotes that sits on my desk that I absolutely love because it always seems like I get just the right quote when I need it. So let's see what today's quote is. I don't look at these in advance, by the way. Okay. Anything, everywhere, little or big, becomes an adventure when the right person shares it. Kathleen Norris. Anything, everywhere, little or big, becomes an adventure when the right person shares it. I have to say, I feel like this is the first quote that I want to amend a little bit. Usually I just take the quote and I run with it. But this quote, I feel like I want to change it to say, anything, everything, little or big, becomes an adventure when you have the right mindset. Because that is what I have found, is that anything can be an adventure. Going to the DMV can be an adventure if you have the right mindset. If you're open, I have met I've had some really interesting conversations when I've been forced to go to the DMV unplanned. I live in California. I don't know where you live, and you can actually make appointments here at our DMV. And when you make an appointment, you're kind of like in and out. It's awesome. But one time my license was stolen, and so I had to go unexpectedly, and I had the most interesting conversation with a person who I actually ended up grabbing a meal with after that. So, I believe that everything can be an adventure if you have the right attitude. I was once on a girls' trip, which is coming up again soon. I have these 4 girlfriends that one of whom I've known since I was 12? I have to actually do the math every time I think about it. Whatever 8th grade is. One of whom I've been friends with since 8th grade. The other 3 I've been friends with since 1998, so 27 years. And we get together once a year because it's so important to us. And one time we got together someplace where I had to actually do some logistical stuff. I had to actually get a car registered. And it was actually quite a lot of work, but I refused to leave the mindset of being on vacation. And so, fortunately, I was somewhere really pretty and I was just admiring all of the plants and the trickling waterfalls and that sort of thing. So, I just want to amend this quote that I pulled today and change it to anything, everything, little or big, becomes an adventure when you have the right mindset, because I don't think you need people to share in the joy for it to be an adventure. Yes, that's wonderful, but it can be an adventure just you with the right mindset. And I often find that there's a little sentence that I say to myself that helps me shift something from being challenging to being interesting. And so instead of complaining about whatever it is that has happened to me, I will say something like, "Hmm, isn't that funny?" Because you know what? People and situations are funny. And look, it doesn't always work. Let me tell you. I know some of us are having some big feelings. I know I've been having some big feelings for the last couple of months. And I've always believed that how you show up when you're facing a challenge is who you really are. Because it's easy to be positive and optimistic and friendly when everything's going your way. But when things are a little bit challenging, that's when your true, "What are you made of?" comes out. So, mindset and reframing are really, really powerful tools, brain science backed tools. Feel free to do some research on those because I have found them to be really helpful. And if you are actually looking for maybe a book recommendation, I love Stoic philosophy. And while this book is not billed as a Stoic book, I've been listening to it recently and I'm really enjoying it. And it's called 101 Essays That Will Change the Way You Think by Brianna Wiest. And I highly recommend that book. It's been fantastic having it in my ear. My husband's been listening to it as well, and he loves it as well. So it's a good book. And so I want to talk about the fresh start effect. So the definition of the fresh start effect is that it is a psychological phenomenon where people are more motivated to make positive changes at a quote unquote temporal landmark. And what's a temporal landmark? A temporal landmark is simply something that you consider significant in terms of date or time. So it can be a Monday, it can be the start of the month, it can be the start of the year. That's why I am bringing it up in January. It could be your birthday, and it could literally be tomorrow. When it comes to living a life of your dreams, the best time to start was yesterday, and the next best time to start is today. So a fresh start event can be anytime. As they mention here, it's a psychological phenomenon. So I don't know about you, but I definitely feel like a good part of life is just, maybe the majority of life, maybe all of life is just managing these inches here in between your forehead, meaning your brain. Sometimes it feels like I'm just playing a brain game with myself in order to do the things that I wanna do. And the fresh start effect is that thing. And the interesting thing about the fresh start effect is that the fresh start effect can help you detach yourself from your past. So there's 2 parts to the fresh start effect. There is saying, "Whatever I have lived up until this point and wherever I am now, good or bad, I am closing the door on that. I am putting that to bed, putting it to rest," whatever you need to say to yourself to move forward. And then step 2 is, "And I am going to start anew." We all have things that we want to have done differently. We all have lessons that we want to walk away from and be born anew because of them. And what the fresh start effect shows is that it's simply a choice to make that fresh start. It doesn't have to be January 1st. It doesn't have to be even February 1st. It can be as early as tomorrow. Now, I will say from my own experience with the fresh start effect that I have some tips here on how to make the fresh start effect more effective for you. I do believe that when you decide to make a change, that there are 2 things you should do in order to maximize the change? And actually, I'm going to say 3 things. The 3 things are 1, pick a date in the future. I would say pick a date 2 to 4 weeks in the future. So if there's something that you wanna do, whether it is start writing a book, eating healthier, s look for a new job, whatever the thing is that you have been putting off that you wanna work on, pick a date 2 to 4 weeks from today, and then write that date down. Hopefully, you have a physical planner. You know, I'm a huge fan of physical planners. If you don't have one, get one now. This is a physical planner that I've been using for the better part of a decade. It's not perfect because guess what? There is no perfect planner. There isn't. The perfect planner is the one that you will use. This is the one that I have found to be the most useful to me. And as I said, I've been using it for the better part of a decade. This is this year's planner. It always sits right in front of me. Here is last year's planner right here. Actually, the last 2 years' planner are right within reaching distance in case I need to grab them. So, tip number 1, pick a date 2 to 4 weeks from now to start whatever it is you want to start doing and write that date down in your planner. Step number 2 is whatever the thing is that you want to do, start doing it 7 to 10 days before that date. And I have found this to be such a great psychological hack because I don't know about you, but I have a little bit of a rebel tendency where just because I've said I'm going to do something doesn't mean I want to do it. Again, I've said most of my life, it feels like I'm just wrestling with the little demon up here in my head. And so, a way that I have found to work around that is rather than waiting for that date, I get to feed my little rebel by saying, "You know what? I'm gonna start earlier. I'm not gonna wait for that date. I'm gonna start now." And the great thing about starting before your date is that you are so much kinder to yourself before you set that fresh start effect date than after. Afterwards, you might get into things like, "Oh, I haven't done it as much as I've said I was gonna do it, no, 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 no." But all the days before that date that you've set, that is you patting yourself on the back like, "Look at me. I'm starting early. Oh my goodness, I'm so proud of myself." That's the difference between starting early. I also call that gaining momentum, right? You're gaining momentum working on the thing you wanna work on. So, basically, that's you crossing the starting line already running versus being at a dead stop and saying, "Oh, now I have to start." Okay? It takes the pressure off that date that you've picked as a fresh start effect. And then the 3rd tip is to and we say this in a lot of our books, but especially in Rock Your Morning. You have to practice and track your new skill so that it becomes a habit. And actually, in Rock Your Morning, we even give you a little bit of a habit tracker here. The planner that I mentioned below, that QR code, that planner has built-in habit trackers on its pages. You could also find a habit you can make a habit tracker with a calendar, just, check off each day that you do. There are habit tracker Post-it notes, whatever works for you. Say to yourself, "Okay, whatever this thing is that I'm gonna do," maybe it is take a 20-minute walk every day. I'm going to take a 20-minute walk, mm, not every day, but 5 days a week. And I say to pick not 7 days a week because 7 days a week is just a much harder commitment to yourself. So I would say pick 4 to 5 days a week of doing something and write it down again in your planner and then track it. So give yourself a heart or a check mark or a star or whatever feels good in your habit tracker each day that you do the thing that you say you're going to do. And then so this is a bonus tip here. And then if you do 75%, 70 to 75% of what you say you're gonna do, I would consider that a win. So if you say you wanna walk 5 days a week and you walk 4 days a week, yay! Pat yourself on the back. That is success. Okay, so let me just recap the tips for starting something that you've been putting off with the fresh start effect. Number 1, pick a date 2 to 4 weeks in advance to actually start this thing that you've been saying you want to do. Number 2, start doing that thing before that date, 7 to 10 days before that date, even. Number 3, this thing that you say you want to do, you need to pick how many days a week you want to do it, and you need to track that. And bonus tip, congratulate yourself, pat yourself on the back, give yourself whatever it is that feels good, do a dance, maybe, watch an episode of a show you like because you've hit the goal when you have done 70% of what you say you're going to do. That is success. And that is what, that is how I wrote these books, was by committing to writing them a little bit each day and tracking my writing of them and then rewarding myself when I did what I said I was going to do. Thank you so much for joining me today. It was my pleasure to speak with you about self-care is healthcare and ways to maximize the fresh start effect. And I hope that you and your family are safe and healthy and that you are taking care of yourself because no one else can do it for you. And you deserve to be taken care of. If you want to take your planning skills to the next level, consider taking the Harness the Power of Planning workshop. It's available on demand at tinyurl.com/HPOP on demand, all one word. That's tinyurl.com/HPOP on demand. We'll show you how to plan your day, your week, your month, your year, your life, and help you to start prioritizing yourself and your goals right now. Dream wild, wild dreamers. Thanks for joining us for the Harness the Power of Planning podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe wherever you listen.